And welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Taylor Rockwell, and today I've got two guests for your listening pleasure. Up first is Benny Feilhaber, newly of the Colorado Rapids. We discuss his move to Colorado, how challenging it can be to switch systems in a short amount of time, how to unlock a compact defense, and his national team status. After that, I called up Nicole Hack, the chairperson of Section 8 Chicago. We discussed the recent agreement between Section 8 and the Chicago Fire that will see supporters return to the stadium for the start of the season. Nicole explains the origins of the conflict and the work that was done to find resolution. I personally feel like it's another great reminder of the work that soccer supporters can do at the grassroots level to bring about positive change. We also talk about her connection to the Fire and the greatness of the American soccer community. We both have reasons for finding it so wonderful. So I'd say it's a good show, an informative show, and an emotional show, so prepare yourselves accordingly. All right, so with all of that said, up first is me saying... With me now, I've got the one and only Benny Feilhaber. Benny, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I say tonight because we're recording this late Tuesday night, East Coast time. It sounds like you all are just getting done with training, or you're in the midst of preseason. How's that going so far?
It's going well. I think there's a lot of new faces here with the team, and so the gaffer's trying to really get us all on the same page with how we want to play tactically, defend, attack, and so. It's a lot of learning right now, and it's obviously not easy to get everybody on the same page in such a short time, but we're getting there little by little.
And how is it for you coming from a different system? Like you get familiar with that, then suddenly you're trying to learn a new one on the fly. How easy is that for you, or is your position kind of similar to what you were doing in LA?
No, I think it's never easy. I think learning new systems is always a challenging thing in sports, and so. I've had to kind of go from, different teams. When I came to LA, obviously that was a different system than I was used to in Kansas City. And so now it's a different system than I was used to in LA, but there's always similarities as well in what you're trying to do. So you try and take the things that you've learned throughout your career and then kind of implement them as best you can with the system that the gaffer wants us to play. So definitely a bit of a learning experience for everybody, but at the same time, I think everybody understands that there's similarities in little aspects of how we're playing here as to how, each and every one of us has played with different teams in the past.
And you mentioned the gaffer there. That would be Anthony Hudson. For those who don't know, he's 37? You're 34, I believe. Is it weird to take instructions and orders from a manager who's so close to you in age?
No, not really. I think, being a good manager is about having the players look up to you, have the players really understand the system that you want to implement and have everybody buy into it. I think that's the biggest thing. And so, he's done really well, I think, with this group so far and the two parts of preseason that we've had. And I think we've, grown a lot as a team in the 2-3 weeks that we've been together and trying to learn the little intricacies, I think, of the system that he wants to play. And so I think it doesn't matter if you're, 20 or 80. I think it's about the kind of person you are, the kind of manager you are. And obviously we're excited about what we're working with right now.
I have to believe an 80-year-old manager is probably somewhat less relatable than like a 37-year-old, but I take your point. That makes sense. So the Rapids coming off a rough season. You were a free agent this offseason. You signed for the Rapids. What made you want to go to Colorado?
Well, I think, free agency, first of all, in MLS isn't, exactly how everybody, thinks it is. There's definitely, certain restrictions, and you can't really, you can talk with any team, but it's because it's a cap league. There's certain teams that, they can't have you, and some teams can, and whatever. And so, until the very last few days, I thought I was going to stay with LA because, that's usually the most likely thing that happens, in free agency. It's hard to really find a good fit and go out into the market and see where else you fit. And obviously the team that you're with is a team that, knows you for the last season and knows how you fit with them. And so not only is it a leap for another team to take a chance on you, it's also a leap for the player to take a chance on another team. And so until the last few days before I signed, I thought for sure it was going to be LA. And it was just a matter of, working out the details. And then all of a sudden, Colorado showed a real interest in me, and it was exciting to see that kind of interest. And it was something that Unfortunately for me, I thought it would have been something that I felt more of coming from LA, and it was a little bit of a slow process there, which was disappointing. And so it was exciting to see a team kind of being interested in me as much as they were. I spoke to the gaffer, and he told me how, I'd fit into the team, how I'd be used. I knew about the players that they had acquired with Kai and Diego, Keegan, Nico. And so there was, it was a new team, and it wasn't going to be, the Colorado Rapids of 2018. It was the Colorado Rapids of 2019. And obviously it was, I knew it would be, a difficult, I think, challenge. But I think that's, it's an exciting thing in sports. You don't want everything to be, one dimensional. And so, for me, it was exciting, a team that wanted me there, a team that had a new vision for the squad and some new players. And so, it made it a decision that I wanted to come here and help the team and be part of that, rebuilding process.
And you've kind of already answered this, but I wanted to ask you, how aware are players that MLS is kind of a weird league? Like, if you're talking to your teammates and you try to explain what happened with the contract and everything, do they understand? Like, if you're talking to a person and they say, oh, yeah, I was traded for $100,000 in TAM, are you like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense?
I mean, I understand the league, but I feel like I'm probably more informed than, the average player. I think probably
Me too, by the way.
difficult
You're more
for a
informed
lot
than
of
I am as well.
but probably difficult for a lot of foreign players that have just come into the league that are used to, leagues that essentially have no, I guess, as many rules and regulations in terms of cap, like you said, TAM, GAM. And so it is difficult to explain to some player that you can get traded without your consent at any given point. Unless you have that, written somewhere in your contract. So it is difficult to explain to guys like that have never gone through that. But I'm sure there are, the senses, I think, that most of the players that have been in and around the league really get the league now. It's something that is important for players to understand it. And so that's something that has been building in terms of the knowledge that players have as to how things work. What is allowed, what is not allowed. And so that's something that's, I think, really important as we continue to build the league.
And when you are, if you are traded or when you were sent from Sporting KC to LAFC, are you involved in that at all? Do they let you know that those conversations are going, or is it just sort of all of a sudden, hey, you're moving the other way? I
think a lot of those are case-by-case basis. And to be honest, I think a lot of things in MLS are case-by-case. And so for me personally, that one, I had absolutely no idea that I was getting traded. When I came from New England to Kansas City, I did, but I was also a guy that wanted to get traded from New England at that time. So, I was somewhat involved in the process. With LA, I had no idea. I thought, I'd be in Kansas City for another year, and I had one more year on my contract, and Peter Vermees calls me one day and tells me I'm getting traded to LAFC. So it was, very shocking at the time, but at the same time, it was, a good move for myself, obviously going to LA where I knew the coach and, my wife's family's from, my family's from. So it was, it could have been worse for sure, that trade, if you're going somewhere where you wouldn't have wanted to be or something like that. But, trades are in MLS are something that is very unique in world soccer. And so sometimes you're involved in it. Sometimes you have no idea what's going on.
And how was she when you said, hey, we're moving to Colorado?
How was who?
Your wife.
Oh, my wife. To Colorado. I thought you were going to ask to L.A. To Colorado. My wife is more of an adventurer than me. So she loves, living in different places. I mean, my wife's 8 months pregnant right now. And so,
oh, wow. Congratulations.
And we have 2 girls. And so for her to be as excited as she was, I mean, she's a special person. And so she was all about it. She wanted to move and get to know, Denver. We had heard lots of positive things from people that had lived there. And so, for her, she was she was very excited. And so I think she's the kind of person that's always excited for whatever's next, and she's never, you know, I want to stay here kind of thing. She always wants to explore, and she's an adventurer. So she was very enthusiastic about it.
There you go. So you're in Colorado now, the expectation being that you're probably going to be creating some opportunities, scoring some goals of your own this season. I asked my co-host if he had any questions for you. His big one was relating to that. What's it like to be the playmaker when an opposition defense has it on lockdown and nothing is coming off? What are the mental techniques you utilize to try to get through that? Like, is it just you trying to play through, or are you looking to kind of change things up a little bit?
I mean, that's tough. I think when you're playing against a team that's, got a really good defense, is able to, close down passing lanes, and makes it tough for you to get on the ball and that kind of thing. I think, you got to kind of change up a little bit about your game. Sometimes you got to go away from what, is typically what you go to. And so, yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends what they're taking away. If they're trying to take away you getting the ball and facing up, then maybe you got to get closer to the strikers, try and get the ball off of the strikers a little more, sometimes running behind, sometimes create plays out wide if everything in the middle is closed down. So it's not an easy question to answer, just because it just depends what they're taking away. But yeah, it makes it when the opposing defense is, closing you down, locking you down, you have to kind of change your ways a little bit to try and find some kind of advantage.
And how much back and forth is there between you? I know Anthony Hudson, it's a new setup for you, but generally speaking with a coach, when you're kind of spotting opportunities as that playmaker, are you then telling the coach, hey, I think this is on? Are they asking you, or is it sort of you're kind of adjusting it yourself and letting everybody on the field know around you?
No, I think first off, I think you got to, understand exactly what the coach is asking the team to do and what the tactics are and how he expects, you to play your position. And then obviously if you see certain things on the field that potentially could help the team or help yourself get in better spots, then you share that information. And I think that's something that, Gaffer's really good at, talking with players and kind of seeing, what guys are seeing on the field, and then potentially, being able to implement that into his game plan. So I think it's all a little bit about give and take, but obviously you got to try and find, how your role fits into the model of play that, the Gaffer wants you to play.
All right. I know your time is limited, so I got two more questions for you. I don't want to get you fined, but I did want to ask your thoughts on Berhalter. When you played against him, what were you expecting from his teams? What are they known for when you're preparing to play them?
Well, he's always been a very good coach in terms of, finding the space that the other team gives him. And so, Gregg did very well in Columbus. I think it was one of the teams that definitely had an identity. You can't say that about every single team in MLS. And so he went there and gave them an identity, and they wanted to play out of the back, and they wanted to expose you with outside backs going forward, in spaces. Essentially, when you're defending, you always got to give some kind of space away. And so that's what he was very good at getting his teams to do. And so I think that's what he's going to try and, do, maybe not in the exact same way with the national team, but it's an exciting hire. I think he'll do well. I think he's shown pretty well, in the first two games, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do so early on, but it'll be more exciting once you see it, I think, against, better opponents. And so January camp's always a tough one to kind of judge, but it's an exciting hire. I like, his ideas, and I think those are the things that he kind of brings into play for the national team.
All right, and last one for you. There's a lot of talk about who's going to take the Higuain role from Columbus to the national team. When you hear people talk about how we need a number 10, are you looking around like, I'm here if anyone needs me?
I mean, I haven't retired from international soccer, but at 34, I think it's always tough to, see yourself getting called in. I would hope that there's younger guys that are proving themselves at that level, and so we'll see. But I mean, to be honest, I didn't see anybody playing the number 10 in January camp, so I don't know if he's going to have the same system as Columbus, where you need someone like an Higuain, a player, and sometimes you got to also deal with the system has to fit the players that you have. And so if he doesn't think he has an Higuain player in pool, then he has to maybe, tweak it a little bit. And so we'll see what he does. I think it's exciting. Of course, if I were to get a call for the national team, I would be in there in a second. But I think that that might be something that I don't expect that, coming anytime soon.
All right. Well, I am 34, and I also have not retired from the national team, so we've got that in common. But I know you got to
maybe we'll be playing together soon.
There we go. I like that. You can come to Richmond and play in the adult league here. That works for me. But Benny, thank you very much for taking the time. Good luck with the rest of preseason, and good luck with the season.
All right. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you once again to Benny for taking the time to come on the program. I think we caught him after training on the way to a team dinner, so I appreciate that he was willing to do a Sorkin-esque walk and talk. Hopefully we can have him on again, if for no other reason than to discuss plans for our future amateur soccer team here in Richmond. I'm sure he's up for that. Up next, I'm going to be talking to Nicole Hack, the chairperson of Section 8 Chicago. They are the Independent Supporters Association for the Chicago Fire, and they've been in a tense standoff with the Fire front office for several months, but that, at least partially, appears to be at an end. Nicole is here to explain what happened, why it happened, and the work that's been done to find resolution. But before we get to Nicole, we've got to talk sponsors. Today's episode of the Total Soccer Show is brought to you by Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf providers for U.S. Soccer, Major League Soccer, the Total Soccer Show, the USL, and the NCAA. If you're a Fire supporter and you want to renew your love for the club, you can pick up a Chicago scarf. If you're not a fan of the Fire or you're not ready to renew your love, well, then they've got lots of other choices for you, including the custom option. You can make your own to celebrate whatever you want. Maybe you're annoyed that Benny Feilhaber did not get more time with the national team under Jurgen Klinsmann. Maybe design a scarf that pictures the two of them locked in Mortal Kombat on one side and the victor on the other. If we're going the Mortal Kombat route, though, the video game route that is, I assume you'd then have to have like Sunil Gulati in the background watching and eventually demanding, "Finish him!" I don't know if they yet have that option. Hopefully they will someday. But if you would like to expand or start your scarf collection, but you don't want to pay full price, then that's okay too, because we've got you covered. Go to roughneckscarves.com and use the promo code TOTALSoccerShow, all one word, all uppercase, at checkout to get 20% off your order. Once again, that's RUFFNECK scarves.com, and the promo code is TOTALSoccerShow for 20% off. Thank you to Roughneck Scarves, as always, for sponsoring this episode. Now, let's get to my conversation with Nicole Hack, the chairperson of Section 8 Chicago. Nicole, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Of course. It's a pleasure to chat with you today.
I like the hesitation there. It's a pleasure, I think. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it will be.
It is.
All right, perfect. Well, to start off, I wanted to ask you, before we started recording, I tried to do my summary of Section 8. It was very wrong. So instead, I'm going to ask you to explain, for those who don't know, what exactly is Section 8?
Section 8, Chicago, we're not a supporters group. We're the Independent Supporters Association for all fans and supporters of the Chicago Fire Soccer Club. So basically, we're an umbrella organization for all supporters groups that would be underneath us.
And how did it get its start, and what is your role as chairperson?
Started, I don't remember what year, early 2000, when supporters were standing in Soldier Field at the time in the section known as Section 8. And that's
that makes sense.
that originated. I don't know the history as well as some other folks in the community, so I don't want to botch that description for them and how exactly it started, but it started with, just wanting to unite the community. Mm-hmm.
And so, and your role as chairperson, are you organizing? Are you negotiating? Are you making deals?
I'll totally take the field. I basically oversee the board, and I'm the spokesperson for all supporters in the community. And negotiating, planning, it kind of is whatever best suits the chairperson of that year, their personality. So I'm really big into community outreach, so I'll be doing some community outreach things, but also helping with legal aspects of the group, financial aspects, and these ongoing talks with the Fire front office, which is why I'm here to chat with you. All
right. Well, yeah, then let's get to that. I know that Section 8 and the team have come to an agreement. Things seem better after months of things seeming pretty bad. But I kind of want to get to the resolution second, because I wanted to try to understand what led to things getting so bad where there was the boycott. Like, I am an outsider to all this from like what I read, it sounds like everything kind of relates back to the club's interactions, treatment of Sector Latino, and it sounds like it all kind of relates to one specific incident with the smoke bomb, or at least that was the kind of like final incident. So is it a case that like maybe with that one that like the club was a little bit heavy-handed, or has it sort of been an ongoing thing where the club maybe deals with perceived infractions a little bit too extremely?
Too extremely is 100% probably the right way to describe it. It's a little officious and paranoid. The smoke bomb rumor that probably most of the public has heard was the last incident that happened. There were smaller infractions that happened beforehand that led up to, it wasn't a ban, but the canceling of tickets of all Sector Latino or all those that stood in 101. They were still able to attend games. They just weren't able to utilize their season tickets or stand in 101. 101 was empty and vacant. The major issue came in May 20th when there was a fight between Sector Latino and Houston fans, allegedly, in front of the stadium after a game. And instead of our security reprimanding people at that time, they took it upon themselves after a smoke bomb went off on a following game on June 2nd to cancel the tickets of all of Section 101, including, 150 or so people who were not involved in the altercation, who might not have even attended the game that day. So that's where our issue as Section 8 stood, and as a community we stood, is that we didn't agree with the collective punishment. We're not okay with fighting. We don't want fighting or condone fighting in our stadium or outside of our stadium. But the fact that the collective punishment happened is what we were against.
Oh, okay. See, that makes more sense. I was kind of operating under the impression that it was like there was a bunch of infractions, like tensions built up, and then eventually the fire were just sort of like, okay, we've had enough problems like with this whole group, so that's it. And I kind of didn't realize that it wasn't about like the individual actions. It was more about sort of the heavy-handedness of, again, suspending the season tickets or of people who weren't even there. Yeah, that seems a bit dramatic. So then you all kind of take action. Does the boycott happen immediately, or does it happen once the front office kind of doesn't respond accordingly?
The boycott started happening once the canceling of tickets happened. Mm-hmm. So that happened, I believe, like early August, end of July, off the top of my head. Basically, Section 8 Chicago was standing in solidarity with other supporters, with Sector Latino and other groups that stand in 101.
And was everybody on board pretty fast? Was there anybody in there, like, did you have like a group of people saying like, I can kind of see where the team is coming from, or was everybody sort of ready to go from the outset?
I think in the beginning, most people were ready to stand in solidarity, but of course there were some fans who wanted to keep going to games and wanted to keep, supporting the fire and had different opinions on things. And ultimately, the Section 8 board of 2018, we can't tell people how to support the team or how to protest against the team. So we boycotted by having 90-minute tailgates at the stadium, by not supporting in the stadium, by hosting watch parties for home games instead of being at the stadium. But we couldn't tell people not to go into the stadium and support. We could suggest it, but if people wanted to go in, that's ultimately their decision.
So that lasts like through the end of the season. Obviously, you all have been kind of working. It sounds like there have been a series of meetings. How did the kind of compromise that you all have reached end up coming to be, and what was that compromise?
So we had several meetings over the last few months, and I want to thank everybody who's been involved in those conversations and helping in the negotiation process. Originally, we wanted to request from the front office, and we did request that there would be a public apology to 101 for their cancellation of tickets, specifically those who weren't involved in the altercation on May 20th. We wanted no collective punishment in the future, and we wanted 101 to be reinstated for the 2019 season. Essentially, all three of those items weren't reached. So in the press release that was released earlier this week by both the Fire and Section 8 Chicago, Sector Latino will be returning to the stadium. However, they won't be returning to the stadium under the name of Sector Latino. They're not able to use that name anymore per the front office. They met with one another and decided we're given the option of Section 101, 134, and 137 for 2019 and moving forward, and they voted on 137. So in meetings, we brought 137 to the table with other 101 and Sector Latino representatives. So they'll be returning to the stadium in Section 137 this year, and that's kind of where we're moving forward from there.
So was it basically then, I don't want to, cause any issues between you and the Fire, but like that sounds to me like basically they're like, we don't want this group of people under this name to be at the games, but they can be there under a different name?
Yeah, something like that. I think that no matter what, in our heart of hearts, Sector Latino is always going to be Sector Latino. Mm-hmm. And once new management is in, hopefully they'll be able to return with that name. Or also that's just something that we're going to work on this year and negotiate and see if that they'll be recognized as Sector Latino again in future meetings with the front office.
Do you feel like you all struck a blow against the Fire, against the front office, or does it feel like sort of like this was the least that the team could have done to get people back inside so that everybody's cheering on the first day?
I think on both the supporters and the front office, and we came to a good mutual agreement place. I personally think this is the least they could have done to get them back into the stadium. And I think this is just the beginning and that we have a lot of work moving forward. I'm glad that everybody from the Sector Latino 101 contingent are able to get back into the stadium and do their thing. I just hope that moving forward that we'll be able to have develop a better relationship again with the FL. But these are just, again, baby steps, first steps, initial steps.
Mm-hmm. Well, you kind of answered it there because I was going to ask about like relations at present and going forward. Like, why have things become so strained? Because I read a few different articles that were sort of focusing on like the match game experience not being that ideal, or that like there's concerns about the stadium and like there's maybe a lack of respect. Like, so why do you feel like this, like from a team that used to be this like incredibly well supported, incredibly successful team? Why do you think things have kind of gone the way they have to the point where there are fan boycotts and sort of widespread dissatisfaction with the team?
So just for a background information, I've been going to games regularly since 2004, which is when they were at Soldier Field. And I got involved because of what a great environment that it was and what a vibrant community and energy that the supporters put out for the team. And over the last 10 years or so, under newer management and ownership, the team has been on a decline. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame supporters at all, but essentially there's been a decline in culture for the last 10 years because of this, because the team hasn't truly been contenders in the league. Mm-hmm. They finished last place in MLS in 2015 and 2016. It's pretty difficult to keep growing a supporters culture when a team is so poor and lacking and not making playoffs in a league where a lot of teams make the playoffs. So I think that's part of it, aside from the issues in 2018, which obviously added to this hardship of the team not being very good, quite honestly, on the field.
That makes sense to me. And so then if you're saying, like, if you look at this as, like, this group kind of comes together, Section 8, they get a reaction where people are allowed back in, it feels like some issues are resolved. Does it give you all more confidence? And do you think it should give other groups, like, related to different teams around Major League Soccer, should it give them more kind of confidence and spirit to kind of challenge the front office and go at them? And is this something that you all expect to do? Not like boycotting all the time for little things, but just sort of, does it give you the feeling that you can sort of go at them a little bit more than maybe you did before you started this?
I think it's important for all organizations or groups to remember that while we all want to have a good working relationship with our front office, that we are independent from them, and that we do have a voice. And soccer without fans, as the saying goes, is nothing. So voice your opinions and stand up for what you believe in, especially if things are being mistreated to an extent that things really do need to be heard.
But is that hard for you? Because like I feel like it's really easy if you are a media personality, you can criticize people, and like the club, if you have like if you're hosting SportsCenter, they're not going to kind of go after you if you make a comment about the Fire. Whereas if you're trying to attend games and have some interaction, some relationship with the front office, is that very challenging to like walk that line of kind of staying true to the people that you're representing, but also working to have a relationship? Like, is that a challenging balance?
Yeah, 100%. It's a challenging balance. Even in talking to you right now, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible.
There we go.
But then, then behind closed doors with, smaller groups of people from the community, we're allowed to express ourselves and make plans in that way. I'm not 100% satisfied with the outcome. I know a lot of people are super excited to get back to the stadium, and I am too, and I'm glad that they're excited. I know a lot of people still won't come back until Nelson Rodriguez is gone. And I respect and understand that too. So it is definitely a balance, especially being on the board of directors, to try our best to be diplomatic and represent the community, but also build a good working relationship with the front office.
I'm assuming that you are excited to be back in the stadium, not just because it means you get to watch games, but because of the relationship you have to that stadium. I really enjoyed the Continental Tire feature on you and your kind of relationship to the team. And I really didn't know before that, how strong that relationship was and about your dad. So for people who haven't seen that, I'll post a link to it in the show notes. But I would like to hear a little bit more, if you don't mind, about what the Fire are to you in terms of how you've connected to your family, or how you did connect to your family.
I don't know if you know this or if you've seen, but today is actually the anniversary of my dad's passing. So I appreciate you asking, and I have no issue talking about this all. And I was so humbled and honored to represent our community and my dad and my family in this Continental feature that you're talking about. So I don't know how far you want me to go back, but essentially soccer consumes my life because of my dad. I started playing at an early age. I started going to indoor games, Chicago Power games with my dad, and explored the ball from there. And then in 2004, we got season tickets as a family, and my sister and I would sit one half with our family and stand one half with Section 8. And so 9 years ago when my dad passed, it's hard time, obviously. That goes without saying. I found that some people in my regular day-to-day life weren't super supportive of what was happening, but the Section 8 community, the supporters community, they were so supportive of my sister and I and showed so much love, and they still do. And that's what this feature is about. And I have little words right now if you can't tell how much I appreciate everyone for being supportive and the gift my dad gave me of the game and being able to share that with him. And I posted something on Instagram last night or early this morning just saying, throughout everything that's been going on this week, it's been kind of a stressful, hectic week, few months, and I just really wish I could have that conversation with him.
Yeah.
Say, what the hell, Dad? What do you think? What do you think's going on? What do you think about this? Would you be boycotting? I feel like he would have canceled his season tickets years ago because of the lack of quality on the team or on the field.
Yeah, so I did see that post, and it's part of the reason why I asked is because for us right now with what's happening with Daryl and the response that's gotten, it has been kind of an amazing reminder of how just strong and tightly knit and supportive the American soccer community can be, and so. To know that is a sort of it's not just it can motivate people to protest and kind of stand against injustice, but that it can also be a way to kind of have that sort of love and support around you. It's why I think stories like what Section 8 have done and what you have done and your dad did are so important to talk about, which is again why I wanted to have you on. So thank you for sharing that. I'll say it got a little dusty in the office while you were explaining that one. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I really appreciate all that you all have done, and full disclosure, you were wonderful to hang out with the two times we've been in Chicago in the last year or so. So Nicole, I really appreciate all that you've done, all that you will continue to do, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you so much for supporting us and thinking of Daryl, and just a note that soccer is super powerful and that it unites people, and to use that to our strength.